Hey everybody, it's Mrs. Gluck. It's story time with Mrs. Gluck. And here's my face. I'm going to get myself positioned over here today. You fourth graders, you'll be going into mythology pretty soon, leaving Connecticut far behind. And you are going to be talking about how these stories have continued throughout the years into science and into the world we live in today. People still talk about Greek and Roman gods and goddesses. You know a few. You know Poseidon. He is the god of the sea. And you know Hercules. And you know so many like male figures of mythology. But I thought it'd be fun to kind of explore this new book. This is a brand new book called Goddess Power. I got it on Kindle Unlimited so that I could share it with you today. And I think it's going to be I'm just going to read the first story, but I want you to know about it. So if you want to explore it some more, I will have this in in my YouTube channel so you can read it some more, but you can, it's kind of a nice, fun little book. All right. So Mrs. Gluck is going to skip out of this story and go to, not the story, but out of this, and we're going to go over here to Kindle Unlimited. So the cover looks like this, and these are goddesses, and this is the back cover, and that's a goddess, and I love this because it's 10 empowering tales. So its copyright is 2020, and it was written at Rock Ridge Press in Emeryville, California. So that's our publication information that you always have to put in your citations if you're doing a report. For Donna, Sarah, and Tori, goddesses in their own way. Here's the table of contents. There's Gaia, I might say these wrong, Rhea, Hera, Artemis, the Fates, Demeter, Athena, the Muses, and I think there's a little table of contents here too, so it might be a little harder to see here. So here's the introduction. Today, a myth is either a story or a falsehood. In the past, a myth was a story, but not necessarily a false story. More important than whether myths were fact or fiction was their function. Myths explain. Whoops. They impose a structure, or they try to make sense of a nonsensical world. They impose a structure on it. So, this book centers on goddesses in classical mythology. Oops, can't see me over here. That it becomes a little more knowable, a little less terrifying. So you know that from reading, we read some fables and legends when you were in second and third grade about different cultures and how they used these to teach people about how to behave, and they were learning tools. So this book centers on goddesses in classical mythology. The word classical means a few different things. Here, it denotes the ancient Greeks and Romans who shared many deities but called them by different names. The queen of the gods was Hera to the Greeks, but Juno to the Romans, for example. I used the Greek names, but drew upon sources from both cultures in order to paint you a richer portrait of each goddess. Different cultures have different mythologies. Classical mythology is just one example. Inevitably, it reflects the particulars of its time and place. But people from different times and places have found these myths compelling. Sometimes they relate to them profoundly. Other times they revel in how unfamiliar this world really is. Connections can happen in more than one way. In contrast to some other deities, classical gods and goddesses take the form of human beings and act like them. Notably, they are not infallible. That means that they make mistakes just like you and I. Myths are as much about their blunders as about their triumphs. The similarities give people an opportunity for self-reflection. But because gods and goddesses are meant to be more than mortal, with more abilities, They let people think about what they could be as well as what they are. So I'm going to go ahead. You can go. We can go back and finish that another time. I think I left it long enough on the tape that you can pause it and read the rest of this. But I want to get to a story. So here's Gaia, goddess of the earth. Her family is Chaos, the father. Uranus is the son and husband. Various children. There's symbols, the earth and all life on it. Strengths, creation. In the beginning, there was chaos, nothing else. Then out of that chaos appeared a goddess named Gaia. Gaia was the goddess of the earth, and she was the earth. It was from her that anything with even a little bit of life came forth, plants and animals and mortals and deities. She was the true beginning of all things. And deities means gods. So other gods came from her. This meant that she was the ancestor of the Olympians, the 12 gods and goddesses who called snow-capped, cloud-wrapped Mount Olympus home. But before the Olympians ever ruled the sky and earth and sea and underworld, there were the primordial deities, the gods and goddesses who came immediately after Gaia. And this is where our stories begin. The first thing to emerge after Gaia was not a deity. It was Tartarus, the gloomy dungeon so far below that it takes the same amount of time to get there from Earth as it does to get to the farthest reaches of sky. Then Eros, love, arrived to bring immeasurable joy and pain, followed by Erebus, darkness, and Nyx, the night. Nyx birthed Aether, light, and Hemera, the day. As all of this was happening, Gaia got to work. She could achieve a lot very quickly, in part because she possessed the remarkable ability to have children without help. That's how she brought forth the Aura, the mountains, and Pontus, the sea. But if she chose to, she could have a father for her children rather than have them by herself. Pontus fathered 5 of Gaia's children, who, like him, became sea gods and goddesses: Nereus, Thaumas, Phorcys, Ceto, and Eurybia. Gaia would get a bit chilly at night, so next she created Uranus, who embodied the heavens, brimming with stars to cover her like a blanket. They married and had 12 children, who were the original Titans, 6 girls and 6 boys. Their names were Oceanus, Coeus, Creus, Hyperion, Iapetus, Thea, Rhea, Themis, Mnemosyne, Phoebe, Tethys, and the youngest, with the temperament of a starved beast, Cronus. But Gaia wanted still more children with Uranus. Next, she gave birth to the 3 Cyclops, Brontes, Steropes, and Argus. Although the Cyclops were massive beings, what truly set them apart was the single eye blinking in the middle of their foreheads. They were skilled craftsmen and could create the most splendid tools and weapons. Gaia then birthed 3 more children called Codus, Brarios, and Gies, together known as the Hecatonchires. They were strong, towering giants with 50 heads and 100 arms each. Gaia loved every one of her children, even more so because of their oddness. Uranus didn't feel the same way. He liked the Titans just fine, but he couldn't look at the Cyclops and Hecatonchires without his stomach flying up his throat. He hated the idea that he had fathered these creatures. He hated it almost as much as he hated the fact that Gaia didn't actually need him to father anyone. Eventually, he decided that he wouldn't put up with his sons, reminders of his weakness, any longer. While Gaia was elsewhere, Uranus locked up the Cyclops and Hecatonchires in dark, damp Tartarus. But even without seeing the treacherous act, Gaia could hear her sons' wails ringing in her ears, feel them jumping and beating the walls of Tartarus in her chest. She rushed to Uranus and shouted at him to let them go. Then she tried to reason with him. Finally, she begged, but he steadfastly refused. Gaia felt as though she were drying up and cracking open. Her heart hurt at the loss of her children. Her head hurt from witnessing the depths of her husband's cruelty. But when she reached into her grief, she found at the center a solid, unyielding truth. She had to save her sons, and to do that, she had to get rid of their father. Her hunger for justice gave Gaia the strength to devise a plan. First, she made a large piece of flint and used it to fashion a sickle. Then she gathered her other children, the Titans, and announced that she had an important task for them. Your father has imprisoned your brothers, the glorious Cyclops and the Hecatoncheires. He has trapped them deep in Tartarus, a place that no light touches and no sound reaches. My poor children, born from such a father, who among you wishes to right this wrong? She held up the sickle. Its curved, jagged blade looked like a crescent moon with teeth. 11 of the Titans looked away, but unsure if they dared harm their own father. But Cronus stepped forward, palm outstretched. I'll do it, mother. A father who would do such an evil deed is no father of mine, he said. Gaia smiled and handed him the sickle. Gaia and Cronus returned home, whereupon Cronus hid nearby, while Gaia prepared to pretend that she had swallowed her sadness. When Uranus approached, Gaia extended her arm as if to embrace him. But the second he got close, open and vulnerable, Cronus jumped out from his hiding place and slashed his father with the sickle. Blood poured from Uranus. Some of it fell on the earth like drops of rain. Where the blood landed, new life sprouted like the first flowers of spring. From one spot burst forth the Erinyes, or Furies, goddesses of revenge who fly around torturing wrongdoers. Armor-clad giants clambered out of another spot, followed by tree nymphs called the Meliae. A piece of Uranus's flesh tumbled into the sea and turned into an important goddess called Aphrodite. As for Uranus, last anyone saw of him was as he slunk away in shame, clutching at his wounds, and after that, nobody ever heard from him again. So that's the next story, Rhea. But I wanted to say that, these stories are a little bit rough. Back then, there was no TV. There wasn't anything like that to watch, so people really got into the storytelling of these stories, and you learn a lot about how flowers came to be, and you learn all kinds of things. So, learning about the Greek and Roman gods is a great way to get to know the earth and the world better, because you'll hear about them wherever you go. All right, Mrs. Gluck is happy that I got a chance to read this to you, and so I'm hoping that we'll get to read another story soon. All right, enjoy.